Hello and welcome to the Voice of Iron, and on this session, we'll be reading about the Panther Light Mech. First, I'm going to do a Sarn reading, and then at the end, I will give my personal thoughts on the Panther itself. Description. The Panther is one of the Battlemechs that is most iconic of the Draconis Combine. The design was originally commissioned in 2739 at the behest of the Star League to provide fire support for other light, fast-moving mech units, with the first models going to the Star League Defense Force to fight bandits along the periphery border. The original PNT-9R model underwent a revision after the disastrous Battle of St. John in 2759, when it was revealed that its main weapon, a Tronel large laser, was inefficient in both range and firepower for the immense waste heat generated. Luckily, the Panther had also proved itself to be both quite hardy, sporting 6.5 tons of armor, and maneuverable, thanks to 4 Lexington lifter jump jets in the legs for a total jumping distance of 120 meters. Thus, an attempt to fix its one deficiency was made by League engineers by replacing the light laser with a Lord's Light PPC. The swap in weaponry, along with superior armor composite, gave the PNT-9R Panther a new lease on life, such that it has seen over 3 centuries of continuous use since its introduction. The Draconis Combine inherited Ashlane Weapons' Panther factory on New Oslo, when the Star League dissolved and quickly put the production line to work building new Panthers for the DCMS. Their first large-scale use by Kurita warriors came during the First Succession War in the Battle for Quinton, when the 2nd Legion of Vega used their Panthers to severely maul the slower, heavier mechs of the 42nd Avalon Hussars while avoiding return fire. Through the Succession Wars, the Combine was the only significant user of the Panther, often pairing it with the Jenner in a deadly combination of speed and firepower. Though the other successor states employed Panthers in smaller numbers, these were either the result of battlefield salvage or older League-era 8Z models. The Panther also proved itself a deadly urban combatant, using its mobility to easily navigate the more restricted space of a city environment and take out heavier opponents from rooftop sniping perches with its main weapon. Lyran mech warriors eventually took to nicknaming the mech the Alley Cat for its propensity to conduct dark alleyway muggings. Demand for the Panther continued to increase, forcing Alshane to build a secondary factory on Jarrett to keep up. In an ironic twist, both factories were eventually lost. New Oslo first transferred ownership to the Free Rosselhaig Republic following its creation in 3034, ensuring that the Panther soon became a mainstay of the Kungsarmy, and during the invasion of the clans, both Alshane and New Oslo were swiftly conquered by Clan Ghostbear, and another Free Rosselhaig Republic Panther plant on Satalis was also lost to Clan Wolf. While Alshane Weapons crash-built a new line on Tok Do in 3053, they could not maintain their pre-invasion production levels, and focused on spare parts and refit kits instead. Eventually, Wakizashi Enterprises bought the production license for the Panther, and began rolling out new variants from its new Samarkand factory. These have gone on to serve every DCMS unit since, including the bloody years of the Jihad. Weapons and equipment. The Panther's primary weapon is a Lord's Light PPC, mounted in the right arm, boasting one of the highest damage outputs of any weapon. Unfortunately, the PPC is also one of the most heat-intensive, though many officers see it as a good learning opportunity for raw recruits to spend their first years piloting the Panther and gain experience managing its heat curve with 13 single heatsinks. The PPC is backed up by a reliable Telos 4-shot SRM-4 launcher mounted in the center torso, supplied by 1 ton of ammunition in the left torso. This mix of long and short-range weapons allows the Panther to stay at range and inflict damage on its enemies and close in and use the SRM-4 to make the killing blow. Variants. The PNT-9R. This was an early version of the Panther built in limited numbers and was first used by the SLDF. It mounted the ancient Tronel large laser, known for heat and maintenance issues, another heatsink, and 1 ton more armor, along with more advanced communications equipment and a lighter fire control computer than the later 9R. Conjecture suggests that all 8Z models were upgraded to the same successful configuration as the later 9R, but retained their different electronics. The PNT-9ALAG. Prizing speed, the Amphibian Light Assault Groups modify their Panthers for speed, dropping the 9R's jump jets to make room for a larger engine to attain a maximum speed of 86.4 km per hour. The Panther 10K. The 10K Panther is a high-tech upgrade of the 9R model introduced by Wakizashi Enterprises. The chassis has been rebuilt using endo-steel construction techniques, and the saved weight used to add an Artemis IV fire control system to the missile launcher, as well as upgrading the original PPC to a Lord's Light 2 ER PPC. Since its introduction, the 10K has gone on to replace the 9R as the most common model employed by the DCMS. The PNT-10K2. The 10K2 Panther retains the ER PPC of the 10K and removes the Artemis IV as well as one single heatsink, but in exchange, the remaining heatsinks have been upgraded to double-strength versions, alleviating the heat problems that plague the 10K, while an additional SRM-4 has been added. The PNT-10KA. The 10KA Panther is a field refit of the Panther 10K. It removes the ER PPC and replaces it with a standard PPC to alleviate some heat problems. The PNT-12A. The 12A Panther is an upgrade of the Panther that attempts to alleviate the heat problems for which the 10K became infamous. In order to do this, 3 of the single heatsinks were removed and the rest upgraded to double-strength versions. The ER PPC was replaced with an ER large laser and a medium pulse laser, while the SRM-4 launcher has also been upgraded to a Streak SRM-4. It also utilizes a targeting computer and additional armor. The PNT-12K2. The 12K2 Panther is also an upgrade of the 10K. It is almost identical to the 10K2, but has replaced the 2 SRM-4 launchers with a single MRM-10 and an additional ton of armor. The PNT-12KC. This Panther was introduced in the Dark Age. It uses 11 clan-spec double heatsinks to dissipate the heat from an ER PPC and medium laser. The 12KC carries a single C3 boosted slave into combat and is protected by ballistic reinforced armor. The PNT-13K. Designed before the Jihad, this version only entered service after the war started. An XL engine increases the mech's top speed to 86 km per hour, while 8 improved jump jets maximizes mobility on the battlefield. An XL gyro allows the PNT-13K to carry an SRM-4 and a plasma rifle. The PNT-14S. The variant produced by the Word of Blake replaces the PPC with a snub-nose PPC and close-range combat. The 14S carries a pair of RL-10s. The endo-steel chassis supports enough improved jump jets to vault the Panther up to 180 meters at a time. 13 single heatsinks keep the heat in check, made possible by the inclusion of a small cockpit. The PNT-14R. This Dark Age variant carries an ER PPC and a clan-spec Streak SRM-4 in the center torso. A standard fusion engine retains the typical speed of 64 km per hour, but a supercharger does allow the mech to sprint at 86 km per hour. 10 clan-spec double heatsinks are carried, and protection is provided by carrying the maximum amount of ballistic reinforced armor an endo-steel chassis can carry. The Streak ammo is carried in a case-protected bay in the left torso. The PNT-16K. The latest variant from Wakizashi is protected by light ferrofibrous armor on the endo-steel chassis. The ER PPC is flanked by 2 Streak SRM-4s, but even with that, 10 double heatsinks are able to keep heat levels under control. The PNT-C. The PNT-C is a modification of the 10K model and simply swaps the Artemis 4 for a C3 Slave. And finally, the PNT-CA. The PNT-CA is a simple weapon swap, using a cooler firing standard PPC in place of the PNT-C's ER PPC. Personal notes. The Panther is a very fun ride, but personally, it is, to me at least, very, very unique in terms of a light mech. Yes, it is still a light mech, but it performs far more like a medium or a heavy, at least in terms of mobility and positioning. That PPC really is what makes the mech so unique. Sure, other light mechs could mount a PPC, but the Panther is built around the idea that you're going to be using it for sniping, at least in my experience. For instance, sure, you can throw a PPC on a Wolfhound, but the Wolfhound is more built for running into the thick of things and spamming its lasers as much as possible, using that large laser to soften things up before you get there. But the Panther? The Panther expects you to use that PPC at range and support your buddies. You will be in the backline with this thing, which is weird for a light mech. Yeah, sure, it can move at tactical speed, but that's just it. For a light mech, tactical speed, like typical 64 kilometers per hour, is not fast. It's downright slow compared to other light mechs. But that's because it's not supposed to do what other light mechs do. It's not in to run in and get into the thick of it. It's not brawling, and it's certainly not scouting. This thing is designed to stand back, watch its buddies like Jenners and whatnot run up ahead, and snipe the heck out of people. It's got that SRM-4 so that if it does close the distance, it can just absolutely just crit seek on you. But it's a lot of fun to pilot one of these things. I've seen swaps where they replace it with a, better large laser, kind of like the first design there, and just swap out some heat sinks. And, that is a good idea too, but that PPC really has the punch that makes this thing worth it. I can hide behind a hill in a Panther, jump up with my jump jets, slam something in the face, and then drop back down with them none the wiser while repositioning myself. And for that sort of thing, it's actually a lot of fun. I even have a nice little story about a custom Panther that I built in MechWarrior 5. A buddy of mine and I, we go on mercenary missions pretty regularly, and his favorite mech of all time is the Griffin, Earthworks Incorporated's, well, I'm not so sure I would go so far as to call it their magnum opus. They have so many great hits, but it is a very, very good mech. But it specializes in sniping. The Griffin, of course, comes with a PPC, and, it's got a couple of lasers, and most importantly, it's got that LRM launcher on the corner, or on the shoulder. And between all of this, it's great at keeping distance and doing what the Panther does, but of course, designed to keep up with heavier mechs or for more intense resistance. But, of course, my buddy and mine and I, we like to play different types of missions, and when the arenas opened up, things like Solaris or other mech jock arenas, we decided to try our hand at it. Problem, some of these matches are weight restricted. So we had to enter into a light match, and he was like, well, what's the closest you got to a Griffin that's a light mech? And at first I was like, well, the Panther has a PPC, and then it hit me. I had a wild idea. I said, give me a minute. And so, after taking a sip of the drink that I had on hand, I brought the Panther into the mech bay, and I swapped around a bit of equipment. I kept its PPC, but I ripped out its SRM-4, and after making a little bit of room with some armor adjustments, I popped in a long-range missile launcher 5, put a LRM 5 and then a ton of LRM ammo in there, and I just renamed this thing the Mini Griff. And believe it or not, it actually turned out pretty well. It turns it into a dedicated long-range platform. It's still light, and while I won't call it the most effective mech out there, I have to say, in a light versus light fight, or in a light arena, having a Panther that can take on the same dedicated long-range support role as something like a Griffin can in the medium or heavy arenas, oh man, it's fun. He had a great time piloting it. I've given it a spin a couple of times, and I have to say it is pretty fun, especially when you've got some lighter assets up in front that are taking care of business, and ultimately, the mini griff is probably my favorite custom little thing that I've done with a Panther. But ultimately, if you like PPCs, and if you like sniping, but you don't have that many C-bills in your wallet just yet, I highly recommend the Panther. It's a good mech, it's light, it's fairly affordable for what it brings to the table, and it packs a heck of a punch, especially from range. Anyway, that concludes today's reading, and thank you for listening to my voice.